You're listening to The Secrets of Doctor Who, where we discuss everything about that hit BBC series, Doctor Who. And today we're discussing another Big Finish audio story, this time featuring the 7th Doctor, called A Life of Crime. I'm Dom Bettinelli, and joining me today is Jimmy Akin. Hey, Jimmy.
Howdy, Dom.
Folks, remember to like The Secrets of Doctor Who on our Facebook page, facebook.com/Secrets of Doctor Who. Retweet us on X, where we're at SQPN. Leave us comments wherever you find us. We love to hear from you. And speaking of which, we do have some more of your awesome listener feedback at the end of the episode, so stick around for that. And I want to tell you about another show on the StarQuest Network I'm certain you'll enjoy, which is Jimmy Akin's Mysterious World, which you can find wherever fine podcasts are found, or at mysterious.fm. So, Jimmy, A Life of Crime. And can you give us a recap of what happens in this one?
This week, we finally learned what happened to Melanie Bush after she ran off with Sabalam Glitz. Mel, now traveling alone, arrives on the planet Rakasta, a tropical paradise that has no extradition treaties, so it's a retirement home for big-time criminals. Mel is there to search for Lefty Lan, one of Sabalam's friends. Lefty is called Lefty because only his left half is still human. His right half is robotic. Just like the villain Tharok, a member of the Fatal Five in the Legion of Superheroes. Unfortunately, Mel arrives just after Lefty's funeral, but Mel meets a woman called Gloria who knows all about Mel's past. To explain why, Gloria shows Mel the TARDIS, and we get a flashback in which the 7th Doctor and Ace arrived on the planet. They encountered Lefty, and Lefty shot the Doctor, causing him to regenerate into Gloria. And it turns out that Lefty isn't dead. He and the new Doctor tell Mel that the Rakastans, who look like raccoons, are fleecing the retirees of all their money. To fix the situation, they need to break into a bank vault, and they can't get help from Ace because the Rakastans have her in custody. So Mel agrees to help hack the bank's computer system, which she does. However, it turns out that not all is as it appears. First, Gloria isn't really the Doctor. She faked his regeneration, and Mel never believed it for a second and just went along with the game. The real Doctor is in the bank vault, where he's at the mercy of a sparivore, a squid-like creature that feeds on people's possible futures. And the sparivore race has a collective digestion system so that what one of them tastes and digests, they all taste and digest. And also the sparivores were expecting the Doctor to be Lefty Lan. When the vault opens, the Doctor escapes, but the sparivores grab Lefty and ultimately kill him. The sparivores have a deal with the Rakastans where they get to eat the criminals who have come to the world to retire, but the Rakastans are behind on their payments, so the sparivores foreclose on the planet. They lock it down and begin eating every life form on the surface. The Doctor insists that they stop and negotiate with him, and the sparivores take an interest in Mel, who they already know about. Because of her travels with the Doctors, Mel has many possible futures, and they know about her because without her knowledge, Sabalam Glitz had been feeding them some of her future lives to extend his credit. The sparivores offer to spare Rakasta if Mel gives herself up, and she does offer to do so, but the Doctor makes a counter-offer, which is that he'll give him the TARDIS. But the sparivores say they already have it. Meanwhile, Ace, Gloria, and Space Cop Nathan later have gotten to the TARDIS in the bank vault. The sparivores attack, and Nathan is critically injured on his right side. He will die if nothing is done, and this causes a temporal paradox that poisons the sparivores' collective digestion single-point failure system. To repair the timeline, the Doctor insists that they stop eating people on the planet, and he takes the injured Nathan to a hospital that will turn him into Lefty Lan. Afterwards, Mel begins traveling with the Doctor and Ace again, but in the course of this adventure, Gloria learned that when she hacked the bank's computers, Mel siphoned off all of Gloria's funds, and we end with Gloria vowing to one day return and take her vengeance on Melanie Bush. The end.
Yes. So, your overall impression of this story?
Well, it was interesting. I listened to this several years ago, and what I mainly remembered about it was I remembered the fake regeneration, and I liked that. And I remembered I remembered Mel's role in the story and how she reconnects with the doctor, and I remembered liking that. When I started listening to the episodes this time, this is a 4-parter. I thought that I didn't like some of it as much, particularly with the Sparivores. They're not always easy to understand. And they needed to be clearer than they were. It's sometimes very hard to understand their dialogue, especially if they're talking over an intercom or something. But I did like how it tied everything up by the end. With the character Nathan later, he's a undercover police officer who is pretending to be a friend of Gloria, but he's also kind of sweet on her. And even after he tries to arrest her, she tempts him about going to a life of crime with her. And then he becomes Lefty Lan again, and his memories are all scrambled, so he doesn't clearly remember being Nathan Lane anymore, or Nathan Later anymore. And I liked his character arc. There's a nice timey-wiminess to that, and they did tie up all the loose ends. I just thought some of the middle part of the story was a little muddy and could have been clearer than it was.
I am in agreement with that. Yeah, it was a little tough in the middle with the. I just really dislike the Sparivores. If you have misophonia, you're not going to like this because they have very like mouth noise sort of way of speaking.
Yeah, they're, as I guess to emphasize their digestive system, the actors who play them are constantly like slurping. Oh. Yeah.
Yeah, it's that sort of I do not like that. So it was hard. That was a little tough to listen to. I do like the caper, like a bank heist. It reminded me a little bit of a story that comes later in time, which is Time Heist, which was a 12th Doctor story.
Team Not Dead.
Yeah, and it's very timey-wimey and that sort of thing. So that was really nice. It was interesting to see Melanie again, to get Bonnie Langford back as well. So we have the main actors actually playing the roles, which is nice. And getting to show her computer programming skills, because that was one of the aspects of Melanie that, her prior life to knowing the Doctor, she was a computer programmer.
Although it's a little unbelievable, just because you could program computers in the 1980s doesn't mean you can program computers in space in another civilization in the year 2 million.
You mean I can't upload a virus to the mothership from my MacBook 520?
You could try doing that with your megabyte modem.
What's interesting, so this is a number of interesting aspects of this, is we needed to reconcile how could Mel, very nice, sweet Mel, run off with a gangster and become a criminal. That was always one of the weird aspects of the 7th Doctor's time.
Well, they didn't imply she was going to be a criminal.
But he was a criminal.
He was a criminal, yeah. And what they don't do here is try to recontextualize what everybody was thinking to make it make sense, because there is no way to do that. That would be super hard from a writing perspective. So what they do instead is they reflect on how Mel and the Doctor have changed, and since then, and they talk about, well, you didn't try to stop me, and well, you just announced you were going, and so they acknowledge what happened at the end of Dragonfire, which was the episode where Mel just announced, Doctor, I guess it's about time I go, and I'm leaving with Sabalon Glitz to see the wonders of the universe, just out of the blue. So they acknowledge what happened, and then they which is nice, and then they build drama out of it. They have the two characters not on the best of terms, both feeling like the other should have done more. Mel feels the Doctor should have done more to try to stop her. The Doctor feels Mel should have done more in signaling willingness to stay. And then they both don't trust each other because the Doctor says he had hoped that Melanie, who was a very moral person and also a very sweet person, would have a positive effect on Sabalom Glitz. but she indicates that didn't happen, and the doctor infers helped him with his crimes and become a criminal. And she, meanwhile, turns on the doctor and says, yeah, and you've turned dark too, which the seventh doctor did. He was much happier and friendlier towards the beginning of his run, and he became much more of a calculate manipulator by the end of it. And then Mel eventually reveals that even though she, quote unquote, helped Sabalom with his crimes, she actually did what the doctor would have done and made all the places they visited where he ran scams better off than they were when they arrived. So she would, Sabalom apparently didn't keep a good eye on his bank books, and she would use his money all the money he stole to help widows and orphans and things like that wherever they had been. She even also says even more, but unless that doesn't really make a lot of sense unless Sabalom had really big bank accounts to start with that she drained over time.
Right. Or he was borrowing money from the Sparrowvores, which was his debt. And that's another aspect of it, is that the Sparrowvores, in addition to just being, ravening monsters who kind of are precursors to the Weeping Angels, they live off of potentiality, future potentiality.
Yeah.
It's another interesting, again, this story predates, the return of New Who. So all this stuff is predates all that. So interesting, but they also, for whatever reason, are the premier financiers of the galaxy at that time as well.
And that I'm okay with. I don't mind ravening monsters being the premier financiers of the galaxy. I think they're in the Andromeda galaxy at this point. But actually, that's a nice, weird combination.
Right. A little bit of commentary on the financial systems and bankers in general, probably. Well, that and another symbolism.
They'll eat your lunch and drink your milkshake.
Well, another bit of symbolism is the Rakostans, this planet where they're basically fleecing everybody. They're taking every penny that they can in taxation and out of everyone, and sending the criminals to die. They're raccoon people. So, and raccoons are, we call them little bandits. Yeah. Or I like to call them trash pandas, but that's I was kind of thinking of them as the people of Rocket Raccoon from Guardians of the Galaxy. I was imagining him among them. But so there's a lot of symbolism. Kind of funny how, it's taxation is theft in this, and this, you can, I kind of was getting a sense of the writer's own thoughts on economic policy and that sort of thing as we're seeing this on capitalism and government spending.
At least they didn't turn it into a big speech. Which is good. Yeah.
So we get what we at first what we think is the first female doctor. It turns out it's not. But
especially if you listen to this back when it was originally released, before New Who was on the air. People knew from 1996 forward, and this is after that the Seventh Doctor regenerates into Paul McGann.
Yeah.
But Paul McGann's status was also, not at Big Finish. It wasn't questionable there. But because they did a bunch of Paul McGann adventures. But it is a nice, what's going on here? Could there be a hidden incarnation here or something? That at least raises itself as a possibility. Yeah. And the answer is no. I like that Ace knew what regeneration was, because she had not seen it on the air. Mel had, when the sixth became the seventh, although we didn't see that adventure. But Big Finish supplied it. However, with Ace, she knows what it is, and when she sees the Doctor get shot by Lefty Lan, she's aware he's gonna regenerate, and she says he'll be alive but confused. And then that confusion helps Gloria convince, or try to convince, Mel that she's the Doctor and her memories are a little dislodged.
Right. By the way, I misspoke. This story is actually from 2016, so it's actually relatively recent.
Okay. Well, yeah. Okay. But still, I thought it was a nice story, and I liked the fake out regeneration. Turns out what really happened was Gloria got a Time Lord neurotoxin and drugged the doctor, and then put him in the bank vault.
I never really
Although
understood.
I'm not sure how they did that, because she doesn't have access to the bank vault. Why does she need Mel to hack it for her?
Right. And why are the Sparrowvores in the bank vault? I mean, I guess the wealth of the Sparrowvoids is
who come there.
And Gloria and Lefty didn't know that what would be in the bank vault is not money, but the criminals that the Sparrowvores actually value.
Yeah, this is a series of writing flaws. They're not connecting the dots, certainly not clearly enough in the first part of the story.
Yeah. The idea that the undercover policeman, Nathan later, becomes the criminal Lefty Larnagan, who comes to a bad end. It's sort of a tragic story there, because he's not a bad guy to begin with. He's a policeman trying to do his job.
He is, but he's also tempted to the dark side, and they do establish that.
Yeah.
They establish this is the kind of guy who could flip. And he does get another 20 years of life, whereas if they let him die, he would have just died. And so he even though he is kind of fated via this time, whatever, to lead a life of crime, he does get to live for another 20 years.
Right. And he does give us the great line where Ace says, "See you later."
Yeah. I think this story has more compassion for Lefty or for Nathan than Sherlock Holmes does for the engineer and the engineer's thumb. I don't know if you've ever read that story, but in that story, it starts when there's this engineer who's hired to come out to a country house and fix some machine, and he doesn't know it, but he stumbled into a nest of coiners, and they're lying to him about what the machine is and does. And he realizes his life is in danger, and he tries to escape, but his thumb ends up getting cut off by the machine. And then he goes to Dr. Watson for treatment. The doctor brings in Sherlock Holmes. They go and they figure out what happened with the coiners, who have now all escaped. And at the end of the story, Sherlock is like, I think the engineer says something about, "It's too bad I lost my thumb." And Sherlock is like, "Oh, now you've got a conversation starter for the rest of your life." And it's like, dude, you could be a little more compassionate than that.
This is why people think Sherlock Holmes was autistic. So the Rakostans, their relationship to the Sparrowvores was also interesting in that. So the whole reason they were beholden to them was, it sounds like the writer was fascinated with economics or something. They got into some budget deficits by failing to be part of the common currency. Brexit, anyone? And so they invited in the Sparrowvore to help them, and then got into debt. So they got this external debt. And it's very, I don't know, it's very wonky in that sense. A little bit of a political or economic wonkiness in there. It almost felt too complicated. Like they were doing too much there with that. So I think if they'd gone a little more straightforward to a heist, and you could still have the Lefty Nathan bit in there. I just felt like they were packing too much into this story. And especially where, again, this is a common issue with Big Finish audio stories, is when you don't have the visual to help you keep track of everything that's going on, you can get a little bit lost, especially if the audio wasn't great. One of the things
they're doing monster voice effects here, and it's like, but we need to hear those conversations to understand the complexity of the plot.
Right. One of the things I do when I listen to Big Finish is I download the audio files. That's one of the things you can do from the Big Finish site. And I run them through an AI transcription service, which the weird names and stuff sometimes gets a little mixed up, and sometimes it gets a little lost in the bad sound. But in general, it gives me a lot better understanding if I can follow along the transcript of what's going on in this story. It helps me a lot more to keep track of what happening. So if folks want to
news you can use.
Have a little way of helping you along with that. So, I'm trying to think of anything else is really to be. Any other notes on this one, Jimmy?
Well, one thing I did like, there's some nice lines in this. Oh, one thing that they picked up from the show, because really Ace and Mel only had one adventure together. That was Dragonfire. Mm-hmm. And they established that Mel only traveled with the Doctor for a short time, but Ace has been traveling with him for a lot longer. Yeah. And so she knows much more about like how to run the TARDIS and stuff than Mel does. But one of the things they picked up from the show and brought back was Ace had nicknamed Mel Donut.
Right.
And she keeps calling her Donut. And eventually it's made clear that Mel doesn't really appreciate that, because Ace like calls her Donut and then runs out of the room, and Mel says the name is Melanie. So they really picked up a bunch of threads from Dragonfire and explored them, which I thought was nice. I particularly like a bit at the very end where the Sparrowvores, after the Doctor has, taken Nathan to become Lefty, and he when they get to the hospital, they had established that Lefty had known Sabalom for a long time. And so they get to the hospital, and the patient in the bed next to Nathan is supposed to be Sabalom Glitz, but he's in surgery at the moment.
Right.
And they see there's a doctor's chart on Nathan's bed, and it has information about his medical condition and such, but it doesn't have a name. I don't know. I guess they didn't write John Doe on it. But the Doctor decides to fill in Nathan Lanigan instead of Nathan later. So he'll become called Lefty Lanigan. And Mel asks, can you do that? And he says, well, I am a doctor, which is nice. But then after this, he's talking to the Sparrowvores, over the phone or something, some space phone. And the Sparrowvores are thanking him because they have a critical failure point digestive system. When the paradox happened, since they eat, time stuff, it poisoned them all. And by getting Nathan to become Lefty, the Doctor fixed the paradox, and they're thanking him. The head Sparrowvore says, "Thank you, you've saved the whole Sparrowvore race." And the Doctor says, I didn't do it for you. If your financial structures collapsed, it would have caused untold misery across countless worlds. Sometimes you have to save the monsters too.
Yeah.
And I liked that. That's nice.
Yeah. I thought it was interesting.
Yeah. I also liked how at the end, Gloria has realized that Mel robbed her blind, and she was taking money from a criminal, and there's no way to return the money to whoever Gloria got it from. So there's some kind of moral justification there, but Gloria has to take out a short-term loan from the Sparrowvores in order to get off of Rakasta. And at the end, she's on her, it's presented like a plane, but presumably it's an orbital shuttle. She's preparing to depart, and she's musing, and she vows revenge on Melanie. One day I'm going to come back and have my vengeance on you, but she hasn't thus far, and it's been 8 years. So I'd like to see him, I'd like to see him pay off that, have Gloria come back with some plot, against Melanie. I think that would be cool. I also thought at certain points, even though the actress who plays Gloria happens to be black, she sounded almost like River Song at certain points. Her accent is very similar to the one that Alex Kingston uses, and she at one point I think calls people sweetie, and it's like, whoa, this is almost like here listening to River.
That's interesting. It's almost like you have a character who's like just like River in that sense. Yeah, that's true. I liked the bit about the Doctor saying sometimes you have to save the monsters. Yeah. It reminded me of the parable of the sower seeds, where the wheat and the weeds grow up together. If you pull up the weeds, you'll pull up the wheat. So you'll let them grow to save. You'll let the weeds grow so you can save the wheat.
That's technically not the parable of the sower. It's the parable of the wheat and the tares. But yeah.
Oh, okay, you're right. I was trying to remember which one it was. Thanks. But yeah, so there was a bit of that. You know, so sometimes you have to let the bad guys exist because to take them out would cause a greater evil. So that was good. Any other final thoughts on Life of Crime?
Nope.
Right. So we do have a couple little bits of feedback that go way back all the way back to episode 134 when we discussed the fourth Doctor story, Revenge of the Cybermen. Elton Lalaham.
Harry Sullivan is an idiot.
Yes.
No, imbecile. Harry Sullivan is an imbecile.
Right. So Elton writes on our YouTube channel, this story is not as great as it was intended to be originally, and the original version is on CD, and it is billions of times better than the broadcast version. So I didn't know that there was maybe extended version.
Well, if he says CD, I'm guessing it's Big Finish, because one of the things Big Finish has been doing is they have ranges where they record unproduced scripts. And so this may have been part of that.
Right. Or maybe an audiobook version of the novelization. That's another one. Because they did novelizations of stories back in the day, too, right?
Yeah, they did. But my guess would be Big Finish. But I could be wrong. Unfortunately, I haven't heard that, but I'll see if I can check it out.
Yeah. And then the other feedback comes from our episode 300. We're getting close to 400 now, but episode 300 was we did ranking the companions. If you remember us doing that. And USMC on YouTube writes, I'm with Father. I was never a fan of Clara. Poor Clara. I know.
Clara wasn't my favorite companion, but I didn't object to her.
No. Yeah. She's just so darn cute. That's the problem.
I know.
I think maybe I rank her too high because she's so cute.
And she was spunky, and I liked that. And she was different than other companions. She was still, unfortunately, a young woman from 21st century London, but they did more with her than normal.
Yeah. And had the Doctor's my boyfriend problem in Modern Who, which is another issue. So we actually really appreciate getting your feedback, and I anticipate we're going to have a lot more in our next episode. But for now, that's what we have for feedback. If you've sent in feedback, we haven't read it yet. That's just stay tuned. We'll get to it in our future episode. And so now we'd like to take a moment to thank our patrons who make it possible for us to create The Secrets of Doctor Who, including William L., Sean M., John L., Mark C., and Denny L. Their generous donations at sqpn.com/give make it possible for us to continue The Secrets of Doctor Who and all the shows at StarQuest, and you can join them by visiting sqpn.com/give. We'd also like to thank Zyman Yannick, who edited this episode. So that's it from us. We would love to hear what you think of A Life of Crime, this 7th Doctor Big Finish story. Let us know by commenting on the show at sqpn.com, the Secrets of Doctor Who Facebook page, or send us an email to drwho@sqpn.com, or visit the StarQuest Discord community at sqpn.com/discord. And of course, you can watch us on our YouTube channel at youtube.com/StarQuestMedia. We'll be back next time when we'll be discussing the 8th Doctor story, A Natural History of Fear. Until then, Jimmy Akin, thank you for joining me and sharing The Secrets of Doctor Who.
Thanks, Tom.
And once again, I'm Dom Bettinelli. Thank you for listening to The Secrets of Doctor Who on StarQuest, and remember, I have faced many criminals in my time. None have scared me quite so much as you, Miss Ace.